Hello and welcome to the Global Fashion Workshop channel. We continue our tutorials. There has been a lot of tutorials for beginners, and today's one isn't an exception. And we'd like to show you how to finish cut lines without overlock. Because many people who only start sewing don't have overlock at home, but they still want their finishing to be clean. So pay attention, please. This tutorial is for you. Our magnificent Natasha will show you everything. Natasha's pinched my knee. We'll be working on a sample. We chose this small piece of fabric, so you could see everything clear that we'll be doing. I hope you remember that if you don't use overlock, you need more allowance for seams. If we usually leave 1.5 centimeters, in this case we'll need to leave 2 centimeters. I'll mark here as though we left 2 centimeters. This stitch is better used when a garment isn't fitted or it's an A-line dress or a middle seam of the back, and it'll make seams look more straight. Here's our 2 cm seam allowance. What do we need to do now? Well, stitch as usual. This is a classic stitch. In your case, you will make it on your garment, so it's a classic stitch of a side seam, for example. Here, it's only the beginning. We stitched the seam, and now we need to remove an excess allowance. You should think in advance which side you'll iron the seam to, because we need to reduce one seam allowance to 1 centimeter, so that one side the seam allowance would be 1 centimeter, and we'll cut the excesses. I'll mark it here. You need to reduce your allowance in half. You can reduce one of the allowances when you're cutting. But we don't want to confuse you, and that's why we first make both allowances of the same size, and only then reduce one of them. Here's the cut seam allowance. I'll explain to you what we're going to do next. We fold the bigger allowance to the cut line, and then we fold it one more time. The final result will look like you piped the seam. This is how it's supposed to look. It all really depends on your skill and how good you are at sewing on the machine. You can baste it. If fabric is soft, you can stitch on a sewing machine. We folded 0.5 centimeters twice, and now we'll stitch. You can iron these cut lines if it's more comfortable for you. Or you can do as Natasha. She's doing it with her fingers. The fabric we chose allows us to stitch it without ironing. I think this method will help many of those who don't own overlock but want their garment to be perfect. It will look just as if you've made piping. But don't forget that this stitch isn't suitable for everything. Please let us know in the comments what else you'd like to see, what techniques of working with such stitches you know, and we may make a video about it. We made a stitch. This is how it looks like. You can't really tell it from the piping, can you? This is how it looks from one side and from the other. Here's just a seam. We're moving to the ironing stand because this seam needs to be ironed. We'll be ironing to the right side, as it should look like the... We're ironing the seam, and we're ironing to one side. You remember that. You decide depending on fabric that you have. If its wrong side looks beautiful and it really seems like piping, you can iron to this side and create an impression that there you piped the cut line. And if the wrong side of the fabric is kind of plain, there is no need to iron that way. You can do it to this side, so only a stitch will be visible. But it's a cool way to finish cut lines without overlock, and they'll still look nice. The seam turned out perfect. Use this tip and improve your skills. All the best from Natalia, Irina, and the rest of our team.